and welcome to Divine Shoulder Taps channel. And today we have on my friend Yvette Lopez, and she is a wife, a mom, a high school teacher, and also a life coach. And I invited Yvette on because she has a story that is just so inspiring and encouraging, and it is littered with divine shoulder taps. And so I just wanted her to come on and kind of just walk us through what's happened in her life and the taps that she's had. And I just hope that somebody hears this and it inspires and it helps them. So welcome, Yvette.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you for having me. I feel honored to be part of your show and be part of this Divine Shoulder Taps. I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think that we're going to be able to help others see God in everything the way we do. So I'm excited.
Awesome. And the pleasure is all mine and the honor is all mine too. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and be so vulnerable because I know this story. I know bits and pieces of the story, but it's definitely something that are you're exposed when you're telling it. But I really do feel like in that it's going to help somebody. And I just love how God showed up for you.
Thank
Um,
you.
so
I love the way God showed up for me too. So
Awesome, awesome. Well, go ahead and just start at the beginning. I think let's start with where you met your husband, and I know the story revolves around your husband and your family, so let's start there.
I want to tell you guys that I was blessed with a beautiful family, a beautiful life. Yet I still suffered from anxiety. I had sleepless nights and was very depressed when I was a teenager. And this made me have like a real relationship with God from a young age. And I desired to feel peace in my heart. So I started to pray, and every time I just knew that there was going to be something that God was going to help me with to solve this problem. And He sent me my husband when I was just 16 years old. And he was my answered prayer. He was. He listened to me. He saw me. He loved me unconditionally, and he made me feel like I was gonna be able to live the life that I know God meant for me to live. And I know that I am who I am today thanks to my husband. With that said, we created a beautiful life. We have three beautiful children, and we had our beautiful family, and everything was just going picture perfect until life happened. And in 2008, my husband let me know that he had made a poor decision in his business, and we were going to have a lot of financial and legal struggles that would mean that we were going to lose everything. And when my husband told me this, I was a stay at home mom and I was clueless. And I remember telling him and looking at him, and he was distraught because that was never his intention. But I looked at him and I just said to him, "This does not define us." And before we went to bed, I went to my children's rooms and I picked them up out of their beds. I put them all in my bed, and I was on one side and he was on the other. And I just prayed to God and I said, "You know my heart. You know how much I love my family. You know how much I love my husband and my children. And this is not going to break this family up." And I knew that because of the way I was asking him and he knew my heart, that my faith would be strong enough to go and endure this struggle that we were about to start, and that he was going to keep my family together. That was the beginning of a very difficult time. Um, and God has been showing me through divine taps, as you say, that I love the way you call them, divine shoulder taps. It's like when God talks to you and you don't even really know why those things are happening, but after the fact, it sometimes could be years later you realize, why those things happen, and you see God's hands all over it.
Yes.
So
Hindsight is always 2020.
hindsight is always 2020. You're absolutely right. And so then after we lost our house and we ended up moving in with my family, which was always there for us, um, we started to, move forward and try to make our life the way we always wanted to live it, with our children, enjoying every second of it. And but we were struggling. We had many issues that we were going through. And my next thing that I felt like God called me to do, without me knowing that that was a divine tap, was me to join the Emmaus retreats. And when I joined the Emmaus retreats, I start to open up and start to have this safe space where I can just let it all out. And I realized at the end of that first retreat that my table leader, her name was Mercy.
Who,
And I didn't know. Yes.
what for those of you that don't know what an Emmaus retreat is, could you tell us a little bit about what one of those retreats are?
So an Emmaus retreat is, if you go and look in the Bible, it's the walk to Emmaus. And it's when the two individuals are walking by the beach and they're talking to each other about what has just happened, where Jesus had died and, had resurrected and everything that had happened. But they don't realize that Jesus is right behind them, walking with them, along with them. And, it's like the way life is, like just like what shoulder divine taps are that, God is telling us he's there with us. He's showing us the way, but we think it's something else. And then we realize, no, it's God the whole time. And that's what the Emmaus retreat is all about. It's an encounter with God where you realize he's always there. He's always been there and will always be with you. And that's what that retreat is all about. It's a Catholic retreat that changed my life and was it one of my first divine shoulder taps. And one of them was where I told you that the table leader, her name was Mercy. And at the end of that retreat, I started to pray for God to have mercy on my family. And we really needed it. And I didn't realize that the name of the lady that was a table leader was going to be have such an impact on my prayer life and on my life period. And 10 years later, when I've been doing this and serving so on every year, I one day came up to her and I go, I never realized why you were so important in my life. And then I realized your name had everything to do with it.
Goosebumps.
I had goosebumps when I realized, and it took me 10 years to realize it. But God is always there, giving you that tap, showing you that he's been there all along. And so I kept serving, as I was saying. And then in one of the retreats when I was serving, I meet this lady. Her name is Lourdes. And she also was going through a lot of financial and legal issues, very similar to what I was going through. And her husband was also in a very dark place. And he ended up committing suicide. And she ends up going up to me the first night of the retreat on a Friday night. She doesn't know me. I don't know her. She doesn't know my story. I don't know her story. But when she shared with me her story, I had to go home and make sure that my husband knew that there was no way that could ever be a thought in his mind. Not that it was, but I just wanted to make sure, because I knew how sad he was and how bad he was feeling about everything that was happening. And I just wanted him to know that I couldn't live without him and that the kids couldn't live without him. And I knew that was a sign. It was a shoulder divine tap from God showing me, you got to tell this to your husband. So I did. And so I thank him for this lady that I met in Emmaus. It was a beautiful tap for me. Then, do you want to say something about that before I keep going?
No, I love it. I love how, you didn't know this other woman. She didn't know you. You have this conversation, and she has a very similar story with a very different outcome. And just to see, like, oh my gosh, and just to take the time out to be like, I need to talk to my husband, because I felt like that was something I was supposed to hear. And then you took it to your husband and said those words. And, when you had that conversation with your husband, did he say to you anything after that, like, I needed to hear that, or thank you so much for telling me that. Or,
He was it was hard to hear for him because of what that family went through, and because of what our family was going through and the predicament we were in. And so it was hard for him to hear. And he was just like reassuring me the whole time that was not ever going to happen. But I wanted to make sure, because, when you are in a dark place and going through hard times, you just don't know, what a person may be thinking. And you don't know if they know that there is a solution to the problem. And so I just wanted to make sure. So he was just like very attentive and listening, and sad that that happened to that other husband and that other
right,
father, you know.
right,
Shortly thereafter, I continued to serve. If there's anything that I've learned from the situation that I've lived through, is that before I've always been close to God, but I wasn't serving God the way I think that He wanted me to serve, and that's something that I continue to do and will continue to do, because I know that's why I've been placed on here on earth. And eventually, my daughters are still growing older, and we're getting our situation is getting better day by day, but we're still in it, because when you have legal issues, it lasts more than a year. It was
yeah,
like a 10-year predicament for us. Thankfully we're over it, but before we were over it, there was a thought that came into my mind, like, oh, my daughter, she dances and she had this really good friend, but I wanted her, for whatever reason, I don't know, for her to become good friends with this other girl that she danced with. So I start to befriend her with my daughter and her mom, and we start to go out to dinner, and we start to get to know each other. And one night we're having dinner, and I look over to her, and I start telling her my situation. I don't even know why, because I didn't talk about it with anyone. There's many people that know me that don't know my story, and I start to open up with her. I just felt this feeling like I had to talk to her. And when I start telling her, she looks over to me with face like spooked out. Like she was like, "What?" And it turns out that her family was going through a very similar uh, financial and legal issue like the one my family was going through. You have to remember, 2008, 2009 was when the real estate market crashed.
right,
Lots of people were foreclosing. Lots of people were in situations very similar to mine. You know, differences, but similar. There were differences, but very similar. And she tells me, "Oh my God, I'm in the same situation that you're in. I'm about to, go under house arrest. My husband's going to go to jail." And I was like, "What?" Like, I really couldn't believe it, you know? And our girls are there talking to each other, but we're talking like privately between us too. But it was like such a moment, like, I could now understand that divine shoulder tap. I could see now why. I don't know why I wanted my daughter, to become friends with her, but now I totally understood that this had more to do with me than it had to do with my daughter and her daughter.
mhm,
And I ended up being there for her, and I ended up being able to take her daughter to dance and help her with so many things. And
mhm,
it was my way to serve. And and then her husband ended up coming out of jail, and we thought he was going to come home after a year and a half, and he ended up dying in the halfway house.
mhm.
But I have to tell you that it was a miracle that we got to see what could have happened to my family up close and personal. And I thought that God was showing us what He had spared us, what He had mercy on my family, the prayer that He was answering. He spared us, and He kept my family together physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And He made the impossible possible. So that divine shoulder tap was miraculous. And to this day, that family, they're very close to us. We're very good friends. My daughter and her are best friends, and it's just beautiful. For when you do have that little voice in your head telling you you need to go do something, it's really God talking to you. Even if you're not sure, you don't see it, you need to act upon it. And something you said, Andrea, that I loved the other day was that mercy is compassion and action.
Passionate action.
And I feel like that prayer that I got to start praying, and because of my table leader and her name being Mercy, and me asking God to have mercy on my family, and then seeing it, play out in front of me, I have become more merciful. I have no judgment anymore on people like I used to. And I believe that I have been acting compassionately towards others, whether I know them or not. And it's because I see everyone as if we were all God's children. We're all sisters and brothers, and no one is better than the other. And so I've learned so much from these shoulder divine taps that have helped me to really become fully present and now become a life coach. And that's how I met you.
I know. Well,
And
how we met is just a miracle in and of itself, also,
yes,
because um, I live on the West Coast, you live on the East Coast. It was just you could say it was random or it was coincidence by how we met, but I believe that it was fate. We were supposed to meet. We became very good friends just basically overnight.
yes.
And
I call those God incidences. It's a
God
God incident.
incidences.
It's a God incident.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, I I love your story so much because it just is such an encouragement that there are signs that come up in your everyday. And sometimes you're looking for them, and sometimes you're not looking for them, and they just come out of the blue. But I love that you acted upon pretty much everything that came your way. And what out of everything that happened, what can you say that was like your biggest takeaway, your biggest lesson from everything that you went through?
I have to say that, I believe that in this world, we get caught up in what everyone thinks is important. And even though I've always valued my family before everything else, I think, and I've always had a very good relationship with God. I think that because of the way, this life is, you get caught up and you kind of start putting God to the side, and you think you could do it without God, and then life hits you and you realize you have this horrible void and you're not at peace. And I've learned that more and more. I know God has always done everything he's done in my life. When I was a teenager, that I was depressed or anxious or couldn't sleep at night, or when what happened to me, that we lost it all, I realized that he's always just trying to bring me closer to him, like the walk on Emmaus, the road of Emmaus. He's like letting me know I'm always there. So don't, push him to the side. When times are good, that's when you need to build your relationship with God and continue to be in communion with him. Pray every day. Do all the things that you need to do to continue to strengthen that relationship, so that when life does happen, and it's gonna happen, then you can be ready for it and at peace and know that he never said you weren't going to suffer. He never said you weren't going to go through things, but he always said he was going to be with you. And
Right.
if you want to feel that closeness and that connection, you've got to work at it. And so if there's anything I've learned, is that I always want to stay close to God, no matter what, in the good times and in the bad times, because my trust in him has grown every day, and my faith is growing every day, and I continue to pray that I continue to grow in my faith in God and my closeness to him. So that's my takeaway, and I hope that others can start to put that into practice.
Absolutely. That's amazing. I love that that's what you've taken away, because you could have taken away so much from what has happened to you. And I know that we were talking yesterday about this, and you were saying, if I had it to do all over again, and say my husband hadn't made the decision that he made, and we didn't have to go through the things that we did, that you almost wouldn't have wanted it that way.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, because I feel like I wouldn't have learned all the lessons I've learned. I wouldn't have gotten close to God the way I've gotten close to God. I'm living in the present moment. I feel like I used to suffer from anxiety or get depressed and not sleep at night because I would live in the past, always afraid of everything. I was fearful of everything. And then if I was worried about what would happen in the future before it even happened, I was afraid of being afraid. and
Right.
and so living in the past and in the present didn't let me, and living in the past and not in the present and the future didn't allow me to be in the present moment. And I could tell you now, I am living in the present moment. I realize that all I have is right now, this moment with you, Andrea. And I'm enjoying every second of it because I'm here with you. And I believe that when two people are together, that God puts them together, that God is present. So I know He's here with us too.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. All of your everything that's happened to you in your past. I don't like the saying that whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But in some ways, it's almost like you have to learn from all of the hardships that you go through. And once you learn why you've gone through those, it does make you stronger. It makes you more wise, and it makes you more educated on how to help others that will be going through something that's very similar to what you've gone through. So I love that you could have been bitter, you could have been resentful, you could have been angry, and you know what, you probably were all of those things at one point. And
I
it's
was.
okay because we're human and we go through those things. But the bigger takeaway being on the other side of everything, gosh, I love that you have this beautiful outlook and all you're looking at is the lessons that you've learned. Um,
I gotta say, something you made me think of that I want to say that I learned from someone at one of my Emmaus retreats is that yes, and I was bitter for a very long time, Andrea, but I went from being bitter to better.
better.
And so that's something that you can all do when you're going through things, and only can do when you have God. You can go from being bitter to being better.
Um, how do you feel that others can be encouraged by your story?
Well, I think that people, especially the generation of today, they think that life is supposed to be easy, and I was talking to you about this yesterday. Like, they take things too lightly, and even the sacrament of marriage. People get into relationships, and they enter their life, the next chapter of their life, thinking it's all going to be perfect. Nothing is perfect. And I always say that when we said our vows, I took it seriously when the priest said, "For richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health." And I think that people, when they get into things, they just want it to be for the ups and not the downs.
Right.
And life is a roller coaster. And I wanted to do this life with my husband, and I was blessed when my God sent him to me. And so, yeah, things haven't been always ups, but the downs are never so down. And I'm always looking forward to being there with him. And I think that people have to start realizing that life is not um, meant to be just an easy ride. It's just not. It's a journey. And like you said, we're going to get stronger as we learn from our mistakes, and we're going to become who God meant for us to be and the best version of ourselves. And so stick through it, and you're going to be okay, even when you feel like you're not.
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can end it on a better note. So I just, I think you said that beautifully. So thank you so much for being on the show today, and I really appreciate all the insight that you have given in on all this. And I just realized that you are on Instagram. You're Insights with Yvette, right?
That's right. Yes.
There you go. Go follow this girl. She's doing amazing
Thank
things.
you. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.